As they said, I'm John Fegley. I founded and currently run Aperture, which is a small data analytics startup that is specifically focused around this forward one, helping to identify new opportunities. Really, we focus on the very front end of innovation, and we have kind of a unique and pretty narrow approach to that. Specifically, what we do is we try to map and understand the unique capabilities of our clients, the technology capabilities, the new technologies, the products, and the underlying kind of manufacturing assets that they have, and map that onto an AI-generated understanding of what the market needs. So we look at broadly scanning publicly available data to understand what people are talking about, what problems they're talking about, what unmet needs they're mentioning, new trends that are emerging, and try to connect the dots between those two things. We do some custom data analytics. We also offer a software platform that we will be demoing in the back end a little bit more. What I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about how we see AI specifically affecting this use case of identifying new opportunities at the front end of innovation. So people that are in marketing, people that are in early stage new business development with large companies, especially B2B and innovation roles, how can you leverage AI at that very front end? So, up here. So obviously, as everyone here has been talking about, AI is going to make a big impact on innovation and marketing generally. This is a little bit of information from a McKinsey study that came out fairly recently that was talking about where AI is expected to most impact innovation and marketing. One of the top things here, among all the different use cases from outreach to search engine optimization to marketing analytics, one of the top items was around identifying new leads. Now, I think McKinsey is specifically looking around new sales opportunities as opposed to kind of early stage market innovation opportunities. But it does kind of show you sort of the attention that people are putting on this as using AI to kind of in real time, based on current emerging market trends, identify specific and curated opportunities for a company. So we believe, obviously, since this is what we do, that there's a huge impact here. There's a huge opportunity, and for a couple of reasons. One is that people, in our experience of running many different ideation workshops as consultants and trying to do early stage ideation, people are generally not very good at it. we like to sit around, we like to do brainstorming sessions, and we like to really think that we can extrapolate from sort of market trends or things that we know about, what the market really needs. But people they have very limited and narrow experiences. They don't really look broadly or have, they don't have access to look across markets and stay up to date on what's going on. They have a lot of biases and specific interest areas, which tends to focus their kind of narrow their focus. Doing front-end innovation or ideation very well is just really difficult. It's very resource intensive. And a lot of companies tend to, I guess I would say, underinvest in it. To be able to get past people's individual biases and areas of expertise, you gotta get a lot of people, and you gotta get technical people and commercial people, and you gotta spend a lot of time, and they generate lots and lots of ideas. I think someone else mentioned most of those tend to be bad, right? So you get one out of 100, or maybe at best, it's actually kind of an interesting idea. Also, I think a lot of people in here know that, or sense that there's a lot of untapped data out there that we're just not leveraging very well. There's a lot of publicly available data out there on the web, but also buried inside of our organizations, that if we could just harness and be able to connect the dots and see the patterns, we might be able to have a more kind of informed approach to this front-end ideation process. So I think, as many people mentioned already, this tends to be where machines excel really well. It's taking in many disparate data sets, finding those patterns, looking beyond kind of individual biases and showing kind of surprising new patterns that you may never find any other way. So specifically, I don't know if anybody mentioned this article recently, but there was a Wall Street Journal article that came out, I think, just a couple weeks ago, that looked at how ChatGPT compared to MBA students in ideation. And I won't go into all the nitty-gritty details, but basically ChatGPT blew the MBA students out of the water. It generated many higher quality opportunities and many, many more in much less time. And so, you know, I started getting this cycled around from, you know, different clients of ours saying, you know, how are we using this? You know, how can we leverage this in our process? One of the interesting things about this that I thought was an interesting note is that ChatGPT is very good at generating ideas, not necessarily good at differentiating good ideas from bad ideas yet. And that still tends to be a bit of an issue. In this particular article, I think what they did is they took all of the generated ideas from the MBA team and the ChatGPT team and basically put it out to a survey for people to respond to that actually had like market insight. And that's how they gauge good ideas versus bad ideas, because it's very difficult to ask a large language which idea is going to win. I guess one anecdotal example, here's my son. Recently used ChatGPT to actually generate ideas for things to do with his girlfriend. He was on the hook to ask her out for the homecoming dance, and I don't know if you know about this, but this is apparently a big thing now. You can't just ask a girl or your partner to go out, you have to do like a big kind of thing. So he actually got a scavenger hunt idea and continued to ask ChatGPT how he might do this and specific ideas for how he could roll it out and all that kind of stuff. It was actually really actually helped him out of a bind very recently. So what I want to talk about, I guess, a little bit is lessons that we have learned as a data analytics company and having wrestled with data mining, injecting data into these kind of human-oriented processes, and trying to do AI for the past 5-6 years. Including with the advent of these large language models. And I'm going to do it because from our particular kind of vantage point, which is this kind of early stage ideation. So one big thing that we have learned over the years is it's important to start with the right question. So just kind of going in blindly thinking that data is going to solve all your problems is really, really it's a great way to spend money. I was really happy to see that somebody referenced South Park today. But there's one episode in South Park where the characters are talking about this winning business idea that they have. And they start to go into it and they're collecting like massive piles of underpants from all of the little kids' rooms around the country. And they started to explain their plan and they said, phase 1 is collect underpants. Phase 2, phase 3 profit. And then they sort of like, okay, well, what's phase 2? And they're like, well, don't worry about it. Once we get all the underpants, we'll figure out phase 2 and we'll get to phase 3. And we've seen a lot of data mining efforts and AI efforts start eerily similar to this. Just like AI is a magic tool, there's just amazing insight in this data, even if you haven't really looked that closely at it. And if we just collect all the data, it's going to all magically materialize. And I think a couple points on that. One is that just getting the data, collecting the underpants, is a massive, massive effort. For most people that building machine learning models or doing data analytics in any kind of way, the steps of cleaning and organizing data, collecting data sets, making sure that you understand what's in there is usually like at least 3/4 of the work. Doing the modeling, doing all of the downstream steps, that tends to all fall into place once you really you have a good, clean, structured data set and you understand it. So if you're going to start to go down this path, you have to understand what you're getting yourself into. Another point is you have to have that clear hypothesis of what that phase 2 is going to be. So, we've talked to a lot of companies that basically said, okay, by collecting all this data and we're going to do, phase 2, statistical analysis, we can identify all of this hidden, meaningful insight. And that just never, that might be a place to do some initial low cost testing to see what's in there, but it's very, very dangerous to get into a big effort based on that. Much better thing is to develop a very clear hypothesis of what the data is that you're going to collect, how you are actually going to get, like the tools, the AI and the data mining tools that you're going to use, and what specific insights you expect to get out of it. And then you can actually create some very small defined tests to see if your hypothesis actually bears out. So a couple of questions that I often ask when people talk to me about, especially when they want to get into like custom data analytics projects, they've got their own internal data sources. I often ask, okay, well, what do you think is actually the buried treasure in this data? Like, do you have examples of seeing that? We get people all the time that say, I want to mine my annual customer survey data, or I want to mine my CRM data, or I want to mine my internal research reports and trip reports from all of my people. Well, do you have some hypothesis for what actually is in there that might be, that might be something that you have been unable to extract in other ways? Is machine learning or is actual statistical analysis the best way to get that insight? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a lot easier and it's a lot simpler and cheaper to do it other ways. And then a big thing otherwise is what comes after. So let's say there is good data, there is really interesting buried insight in there, but what does a human do with that insight as a next step? A lot of people kind of think that's just going to like materialize as well. But I think a big part of this is fitting this data, fitting this insight into the existing processes that exist inside of your organizations now. Second thing is be prepared to iterate. So whenever doing any kind of data exploration, data analytics project, the data is never quite what you expect. So we did one thing recently where we do a type of analysis where we look at mine all kinds of internal data of our clients. So we look at their intellectual property, their website, their marketing, technical brochures, anything, including internal stuff that's not publicly available. And we're able to mine this to be able to identify what their major kind of strategic capabilities are and measure that, how those things compare versus competitors and what things are kind of new and old, and do a lot of analysis. When we started doing this, we thought, okay, we're going to mine this data, and we're drawing on a whiteboard here. We expect we're going to see, we can build this big network graph of everything that a company is working on, and we'll see these cool clusters that'll be clear around specific technology capabilities that companies could exploit. And when we actually did it actually looked a lot more like that. And we didn't even know what to do next. Like, it's just a giant hairball. And so just trying to figure out, okay, well, that didn't really work. We had to be prepared to try about 50 other things to be able to tweak and move and manipulate that hairball to be able to identify clear clusters of capability. Another thing was that one of the things that we do is we mine publicly available data to try to identify where people are talking about problems or unmet needs in the market. And so we built a series of machine learning classifiers that basically scan the text to be able to do that. That's kind of a more, that's not a large language model generated AI approach. It's heavily trained. So we had to generate all kinds of training data to make that work. So you have to be able to feed it information of, okay, we think this is a problem or this is not a problem. And initially what we did was we identified all of these things that were clear, like, okay, this thing said it's clearly articulating a problem. It clearly has lots of information that's telling you about what it is, what the problem has to do with, what the system or product is. And we were able to identify those things. But when we actually tried to use the classifier, it was missing like 90% of the text because most of the text is messier than that. Most of the stuff looks like stuff like this, where it says, I don't know, I don't even know what they're really talking about. It's not in the text. You have to kind of infer what it's about. I don't even know if this is really a problem or not. You have to be able to, steer around those things. So when we were actually getting into this, we needed to look at not just the perfectly sanitized version of what we wanted, but we had to address those edge cases as well to be able to actually get this to work. So I think in terms of getting started on kind of a custom machine learning or data analytics project, starting really small, making sure you have clean data, making sure you understand what's in your data. And often we say, start with the hand-o-matic process. So like, just do it completely manually. Get in there, make sure you fully understand it, make sure that a human being could actually do the task that you're asking AI to do. Because sometimes you find that a human being can't even do this, so AI is not going to be able to do it either. And a large language model can spit out, gobbledygook, but it's usually, if a human being can't understand it, then a large language model may not be able to either. Last thing is, people and process matter as much as the tools. So in our experience, the hardest part of any of these types of projects is actually turning data into something you can do something about, business relevant insight. So we did an analysis recently, and we can show you in our software of, what are the biggest needs, kind of what's going on in the world of electric vehicles. And we find, 100,000 publications. We extracted thousands and thousands of companies working on it, topics and named entities and clusters of opportunities. And that's all well and good, but nobody really wants to look at that. Being able to distill that down into a chart that sort of looks like this, you can't really see it too well, but what are the top 50 unmet needs in electric vehicles? Can you cut that down by end user problems, product level, system level problems, component level problems, and which ones are actually the most important? So being able to say, okay, these ones are really trending right now, and you can't see this on the axis, but these ones actually have the most articulated need in the market. So being able to just immediately drill right there, and then in our tool, you can kind of see, this is sort of like a profile that shows you, okay, improving regenerative braking efficiency is apparently a really big deal right now in electric vehicles. Well, what does that mean? And being able to, this is where we tend to use large language models to do summarization, to be able to say, well, what specifically are they talking about? What does this problem have to do with? But being able to get from the raw data to even something that looks like this, where people can start to maybe drill in and ordinary business people can get in and get some insight out of that, is very difficult. And for that reason, I think the team is really important. Whenever you're doing any kind of data analytics, machine learning, you have to have people that really understand the use case and the decisions that people are going to make based on the data. We've talked to a lot of folks that just sort of say, okay, we've got all this data, should we just go hire some kind of Stanford NLP person or mathematician to go help us process it? And it's like, oh, yes, you may need to hire that person, but you have to pair that person with people that can sort of that understand the use case, that understand the business context. I guess another point on here is that all of this tends to be very expensive. Almost any company that is doing, even AI companies, are generally not inventing AI. They're using open source AI models and tools that have been built by many, many people, and they're fine-tuning those things. They're building application-specific versions, taking from lots of different types of tools and combining them together into something that solves this particular use case or problem. And that's where most of the innovation actually is. So don't ever think that you need to go invent AI to actually do this. And I think this is actually where a lot of the innovation is coming from as well, where you're going to see more and more of these application-specific tools like ours and Albert's as well, that are kind of doing specific things for you so that you don't have to have the machine learning person on staff and go through all the pain that it inevitably takes to go to try to develop business value out there. I don't know if this has been mentioned today. Gary Kasparov, who's a Russian chess grandmaster, he's wrote a book recently about AI, and while he said the machines have finally come for the white-collar workers, he also acknowledged that a good chess player with a mediocre machine is better than even the most sophisticated AI machines that are out there today. So that human-machine interface is actually really, really important. And so the question is, how do you fit these new tools that we have, this new data that we have into our existing business human-driven processes? One thing that, and I think one gentleman talked about this already, was how you can use large language models to actually help you code. So some of the things that we've been doing is we've had people who are not data scientists, myself included, actually wrestling with the data ourselves and using ChatGPT to help us do the code. So this is an example where I was interested in kind of like screwing around with the data and seeing if we could do a different form of analysis. And I went to ChatGPT and said, okay, I want to do some clustering. What clustering algorithms can I do that would optimize this and this and this? And it gave me an answer. And then write a code that does that clustering for me. And then I tried to run that code and it didn't work. So I'm getting a code, I'm getting a failure here. Can you please fix that code? And this, you can enable people that you can take those sort of business people, the people that understand the use case and understand what they're trying to get from the data, and you kind of level up their data analytics skills so they can actually do this. Because often what I have found is that when there's a separation between the person that understands what the decision that they're trying to make and the people that are wrestling with the data, it can sometimes be gets lost in communication there. So the closer you can get those people, or the more you can even arm your existing, commercial people with skills where they can actually wrestle with data themselves, I think the better off people will be. Last thing I'll mention, I think I'm about over time here, but I think we're pretty excited about the possibilities for kind of infusing AI into the front end of innovation. And we've sort of just started to scratch the surface on this. We offer software that we give to people and they can kind of fit it into their own process. But we often find that the process aspect of this is really important. So where do you inject AI? How do you form teams around it? How do you interpret the insight and then actually do something about it? It's just totally different than the way people are used to doing this type of work now. And so one example of something that we've been doing with clients is this sort of integrated process where we will help people form cross-functional teams. We will help formulate the initial questions by doing an analysis of what are all the different areas that you might be able to surface new opportunities for the company. And then systematically go deep and use the kind of machine learning and AI-driven analysis to identify new possible opportunities. But then it doesn't just stop there. Actually, holding workshops with internal experts to be able to wrestle with those ideas that ChatGPT or other things come up with, and actually iterate on them and make them better over time, enrich them via kind of an ongoing process. And then kind of setting up individual kind of tactical development teams to go after and chase certain opportunities down. It's very difficult, going back to the beginning, saying that, okay, ChatGPT is this magic thing, or our tool or whatever is this magic thing that will help you generate thousands of new ideas. That's great, but what are you going to do with those thousands of ideas? Who's going to actually process them? How are you going to actually figure out the good ones from the bad ones? And so it kind of moves the bottleneck downstream. And so you have to really be able to think about the right team and the right process to pull all this together. That's what I got. Happy to take any questions if we have time, but thank you very much.